If you're anything like me, then you struggle taking notes in your lectures. At times it can be a real challenge to get all the information that's relevant down on a piece of paper for you to refer to later. Scared of missing out on anything, you might actually try and write down everything the lecturer says, but is this totally effective? Today on GetPsyched, we're going to be looking at how to take better lecture notes. We're going to look at 7 steps to improve that, and we're going to talk about how this is going to help with your studies in the future coming up. Hi guys, welcome to GetPsyched, and today we're going to be looking at taking better lecture notes, and we're going to look at a 7-step process to improve this for you. Taking good lecture notes isn't easy. It's a process that you need to get familiar with. You've invested a lot of time and energy in your studies, and you want to be able to get the most out of your lectures. The information that your lecturer gives you can be some of the most invaluable information that you receive throughout semesters. That information can be really important for essays, for exams, and just for general learning in your classes. Now, it's probably a good idea at this point to go through some examples or give you some examples of poor lecture note taking and maybe what to stay away from. As I've already said, something that you absolutely need to stay away from is writing down every word that your lecturer says. This is kind of like reading an assignment or reading an essay and just writing down everything that you see on another piece of paper. Now, it's by no means plagiarizing to write down all the information from your lecture, but there are more effective ways of writing better notes. Also, another thing that you absolutely have to stay away from is writing information straight off slides. Those slides that you get in lectures are often going to be available online for you to print off, and more often than not, your lecturer really should give you printed out copies at the start of the lecture for you to refer to. Therefore, you have all the information off the slides that you need, and you really don't need to copy anything down from there. So let's get into the 7 steps for improving your lecture note taking. Step number 1. Find a style of writing and of taking lecture notes that you prefer and that fits you best. Some people quite like typing on their laptops, other people quite like taking notes on paper, and some people like writing graphs and tables to help with their lecture notes. But what's important is that you find a means that's appropriate for you. Whatever way you prefer to take your lecture notes, use this 100% of the time and don't deviate from it. By all means, initially try new and different techniques, but once you find one that's applicable for you, that you're comfortable with, and that you feel like is helping you get the most out of your lectures, then you need to stick with it. Step number 2, take some notes before your lecture even starts. What do I mean by this? Well, what often is the case is that your lecturer will often put up resources online about the lecture to come. This could be in the form of slides, it could be in the form of assignments or articles relevant to the lecture content. A really good idea here is to maybe take about half an hour before your lecture or the day before and write down some general points, maybe 10 to 15 general points that you think are going to come up in your lecture. And when these points are raised, you don't have to waste time in learning what the terminology means or writing it down again. You have it all there in front of you. Step number 3, sit as close to the front of the lecture as you possibly can. This might sound like a bit of a strange tip, and for some of you this might be a little bit anxiety provoking, but trust me, it is an effective way to get better content out of your lectures. The closer you sit to the front of the lecture, the less distractions there's going to be and the more that you can focus on the content of your lecture. Also, the closer you are to the front of the lecture, it's easier to hear the lecture and it's also easier to see the slides, so you're not going to really miss out on any information. You're also going to be able to get handouts immediately. Often lecturers maybe don't anticipate the number of people in a lecture hall, so they don't print off enough information, but at the front you can be sure that you're always going to get it. Bottom line is, sit close to the front. Step number 4, make sure you date everything and that you highlight what the lecture's about. The last thing you want to happen is to be looking through your notes come exam time and you don't know when those notes were taken and you don't even know the general topic of those notes. So make sure that you jot down all of that general information first. Put the date at the top, put the topic at the top, and also put the lecturer's name and email address if they provide it. That way later down the line when it comes exam time or you need those notes for assignment writing, you know what tutor to go to ask more questions about the content. You also have their contact details if you want to expand on anything. Step number 5, optimize your note taking. As I've already said, you don't want to be writing down everything the lecturer is saying, so you want to make sure that you're getting the most valuable content out of what is being discussed. One of the ways that I quite like to do this if I find that I'm writing down too much of what the lecturer says is that I just make sure that I pay close attention for 2 or 3 minutes and then I write down a couple of sentences of general topics or general understanding of what was said in those 2 or 3 minutes. That way I'm summarizing all the relevant information. I already have the slide content, so that way I can get as much information, as much valuable information from the lecture as possible. Step number 6, learn basic shorthand. Shorthand writing is definitely not something I fully understand, and in all honesty, it actually looks like a completely different language, but the purpose of it was so that people could write down notes or extensive amounts of material in really short time frames. I don't recommend that you learn shorthand completely unless you already know it, but there are some words and there are some phrases that you can use shorthand for just to reduce the time of your note taking. I'm going to put some examples up here. We can replace before, we can replace therefore, we can replace leads to, and we can use numbers to help with our lecture note taking. What I've actually done is I've linked a couple of websites in the description below that you can access that's going to help learn a little bit more shorthand. Those websites are actually really good in learning a little bit more of the basics of shorthand. One of the things that you could do as well is that you can make up your own words, phrases, or terminologies that are often used in your lectures or in your topics. You can just create your own shorthand for to reduce the time frame of you actually taking lecture notes. Step number 7. Now this is an additional step called trying out the CORNELL method. This is something you could play around with and see if it fits you. I've tried this style of lecture note taking before and it really is effective for me. I'm going to add an image to the side here so that you can understand this method a little bit better. Basically what it is you divide your page before your lecture into 3 separate sections. The section to the upper right is the area where you give the main body of your lecture notes, things that you want to jot down. You have a section to the left where you can put questions that maybe you want to ask yourself or you want to ask other students or the lecturer themselves about the content that's been delivered. And finally, you have a section at the bottom to summarise the points that you've come up with. What you could do before the lecture is create this format on a number of different pages so that you're ready to go in the lecture. I really recommend that you try this as it's helped me out in the past. Thanks so much for tuning in to GetPsyched today. I hope this video on lecture note taking has been of help to you. Why don't you connect with me on my social media accounts? You can connect with me on Twitter, you can connect with me on Instagram and LinkedIn, and you can also access my website, which is frasersmithcounsellingsci.com. You can check out my CV, a little bit more about me, and video updates. Thanks again so much for tuning in, guys. Catch you later.